Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Primary Sources in Teaching Online webinar series, brought to you by the Teaching with Primary Sources Western Region at the Metropolitan State University of Denver in partnership with the TPS Teachers Network. My name is Keith Patterson. I'm the Associate Director of the TPS Western Region, and I will be your host tonight. Kyle Claybaugh and Crystal Payne will be helping in the chat. Please reach out to them if you have any questions or comments. For those who would like a professional development certificate for your participation tonight, we will provide a link at the end to fill out a brief reflection and give us information where we can send that. Our two-part program tonight is entitled Remote Learning and Research with Annotated Resource Sets and Adobe Spark, which will be presented by the two geeky teachers, Michelle Pearson and Laura Israelsen. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Laura and Michelle.
Tag teaming this presentation tonight. So one of us is going to be talking. We're both going to be jumping in with the presentation, and then we'll also be answering questions in the chat. Feel free to jump in anytime you'd like to ask a question, and we'll take some pauses through this too. We will take a natural pause kind of halfway through our webinar tonight as we shift from talking about annotated resource sets to moving into the use of Adobe Spark towards the end, which will give you some really solid constructive ways to use Adobe. And so we hope that you'll walk away with some strategies and tools that you can use. So I'm Michelle Pearson. I'm one half of the Geeky Teacher team, and I teach middle school social studies, language arts, technology, and I'm also a historic preservationist. Laura, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Laura Israelsen, and my background, I've been working as a classroom teacher and a teacher librarian. I saw we had a couple of teacher librarians in the chat tonight. And right now, I'm working as a digital coach in Denver Public Schools. Very interesting time to be a digital coach as we move to remote learning. So that's been an interesting time in education, isn't it? But that's a little bit of my background. I've been working with the TPS gang and with primary sources. And I think tonight, we're hoping that will be kind of a treat for you.
So we're going to walk through just a little bit of the background of what an annotated resource set is. And I know some of you may have experiences with what we call an ARS in some different venues based on whether you've explored the Library of Congress, whether you've been online in the teacher network, whether you've worked with one of the partnership workshops or something else. And so I apologize for that. And so that's a huge piece for us because in reality, this ARS piece has really come to us fully circle because we started it here. And so our objectives really are this. We are going to look in the first part around some student research, some components of the ARS, how to adapt it. And then we're going to look at how students use it and using ARS as a planning tool to move us into Adobe Spark. So we're going to discuss that Adobe Spark piece and really look at how we can effectively present with that. So let's go forward. And what is an ARS? An ARS is an annotated resource set. It is a collection of primary sources. It's annotated because it has notes, captions, and descriptions. But it also has primary and secondary sources associated with it, which are the resources that are in the set itself. And it's a collection, usually around a theme, an essential question, or a topic. So annotated resource sets can really be used as a teaching tool, but also can be used as a student resource tool. The tool started really after a conversation with the Western Region team, and this is a little bit older logo for us, and I put it up there because it's been around a long time. And the Library of Congress, we came up with this idea a while ago, in fact, years ago, and it's evolved from a very simple beginning to a multifaceted tool, which can be used with students at the really lower elementary level all the way up through college, and then also with pre-service educators to work in planning units and lessons, and us as teachers as well. For individual lessons, they can be formulated into a DBQ piece, and then we also can use it for a larger collection of primary sources that can be used over an extended unit. And it came up over dinner. We were together brainstorming around a conference, looking at what we wanted to do, and we realized that a lot of teachers really wanted resources, but didn't necessarily want a 45-page lesson plan, because I don't know about y'all, but a lot of us go through, look at the good methodology in there, look at some of the thematic ideas, and then immediately go to the resources and take those off. So we figured that we wanted to bring those resources together. So what happened? We built it out. So where is it now? These are just some examples of where this has landed with our partnerships in the region, but in addition to that, also in the classroom. And so we've given you a set of hyperlinked docs here that you can go to, and we're going to explore a couple of those. Laura's going to talk about a few of them right now, but know that this presentation is available to you after we complete tonight. We will place it up on Geeky Teachers, which is 2geekyteachers.com. You'll see the bit.ly over in the corner of your screen, and you can access all of these examples so that you have working examples at how they work. And if you look at the bottom of the student, you'll also see that there are some templates here. And those templates are for you to use and to get some ideas, because the template is flexible based on your teaching need. So project examples, student examples. Laura, what do you want to take a look at? And I'll turn it over to you to talk and I'll click for you. How's that?
Great. I always think it's really powerful to see an example, see where we're going and what we have started with. So let's go up to the Stanley Hotel. This is one of our favorites. So this is an original ARS set that we developed, and you'll notice that as you go down, there's some background information, essential questions, and then as you get farther into the set, you start to see what Michelle was talking about. So there's a thumbnail of the primary source, there's a link to the primary source, there's some background information, what was going on, what do we know about this primary source, maybe there's a fact or two written on the picture. And so you start to develop and really curate these resources into a one-stop shop. So it's an effective place to start to gather and curate and see what you have as you are getting ready to do your research or move into a technology end product. And then as the teachers as we've created these for teachers, we've also added standards and some other objectives. So let's go back.
Okay.
Unless you have something to add about this.
Well, I do want to talk for one piece. On the annotated resource sets, not all of them include all of these annotations at the bottom. It really depends on whether you're in a teaching piece or whether you're in a student piece. But I wanted to point out that we understand that there are wonderful pieces of expertise in our field, and we have built these with the understanding that teachers have that professional expertise. And so we're giving ideas around inquiry activities and assessment activities, understanding that you already may have those strategies in place, but by giving you the idea, this may spark an idea at how you can use something. But we're not going to take and necessarily build out all the methodology pieces here. So I just want to explain that sometimes there's idea building down here, but it may not give you a step-by-step ask, if that makes sense.
And part of this started, I mean, the Library of Congress is much easier to navigate now, but it used to really kind of be a bear. So to be able to put resources into one spot like this and it still is really helpful for teachers so that they have somewhere to go. You've got all your sources, your primary sources for a lesson, and so it just makes it much easier than spending a lot of time trying to find those. All right, so something that we have moved into that's kind of fun, with the National Museum of Forest Service History, we've actually partnered with people and done some different things with our ARS sets. So this one actually, I thought it was kind of fun, was developed by Ruth Ferris, and there's always some questions, a paragraph to kind of get you into what's going on. And then here we partnered with the Forest Service Museum, and there's some primary sources, right?
Yep. Ruth, I don't know if Ruth's on tonight. I didn't see the chat. So
I picked that because she's been in.
Yeah, exactly. So this is really wonderful because it really takes a different look at the science and the conservation. The National Forest Service Museum is a new museum that's in Montana, and they needed educational resources that really talked about what it meant to work with conservation. And we have a very rich body of those resources within the Library of Congress. So Ruth built on that and put a set together for us. And so you can see some of those ideas that are here, along with her background and the questions and also the grade level. So
you're starting to kind of see the beauty of an ARS set, to have the annotations, the thumbnail, the link, the contextual information, all of that in one place. So let's go back to some of our links.
all right.
And look at another partnership we've been working with is Warrior Spirit. So this is really an interesting partnership. So we started working, the Native Americans who have served in our armed forces, they are finally going to put a memorial on the National Mall for them next fall around Veterans Day. And so in conjunction with that, we are actually highlighting Native Americans who served in different branches of the armed forces, and we're creating lesson plans. And this is a little bit more involved than we've done, but we took our ARS set, it evolved into a DBQ, and then we're actually even adding more detail to these sets now. But what a great group of resources this will be for teachers as they try to work with kids around the Native Americans, serving in the armed forces. It's really been eye-opening for us too, how many Native Americans have served and what they've done, and the service that they've been to our country. But so that's probably our most recent work with the ARS sets, right?
Yeah, it's a beautiful, rich experience, especially since we're using a collection that sometimes people don't remember all the time, that's in the Library of Congress, and that's our Veterans History collection. In addition to that, the Warrior Spirit Project is also collecting original oral histories that will be used for the Veterans History Project. So not only are we using the collections that are already in place for the Library of Congress, but this project has grown to also collect oral histories that will be placed into the Veterans History Museum after our team that came together realized there was a tremendous need to do that. So we know that this works both directions. We're not only curating resources to go into the library, we're also using them to teach. And this was a huge commitment by the Smithsonian Museum of Native American History and our scholar partners, as well as the National Museum or the National Education Association of our Native American tribes. And all of these groups came together and said, we need to teach this. So that's a huge piece for us. But beyond that, I want to show a student example if we could. Laura, do you want to choose one that we can talk about that shows how students have used this? Because then we're going to dive in and show you exactly how we broke this down for kids.
I want to show you too. Let's start with Ben's Fort.
Okay. I'm going to click in there, and this is the Bent's Fort one. And
yeah, so this is actually, so move this in, forget the teacher creation, and let's hand this over to students. So it's amazing. Look, this is a student curated ARS set. Now they're organized, they're ready to go, but the students found their own primary sources, put in their information and their links. This is an assignment, the beginning of the research assignment that will move into some technology and products. But how amazing. They have to cite their sources, they have to find their primary sources, they have to make sure that they are working with a resource that is credible and really kind of prove their point and curate their collection in one place. So we've been really impressed with what even our middle school and elementary students have been able to do. So this is a middle school example. Let's go back and open up Minecraft.
okay.
That one is an elementary example. So these were some kids. We made this a little bit different. It's still an ARS set-ish, but they took a primary source and then they recreated it in Minecraft. So those two images are sitting next to each other, but then they justified their image and were able to look at it from all sides and decide whether, you know, this site should be preserved. And it was a really important curation model in terms of our ARS set, even though it's really, you know, just one set or one image, but something that elementary students could wrap their heads around.
And the questions that are in the ARS have actually been put in question format here. On the Bent's Fort example, our students worked with a Bent's Fort example that the TPS team had worked with, and then actually went down on Cite to look at those specific places and annotate it a bit differently so that they could use what a teacher model was built by the TPS team and then place the additional resources and the preservation annotation in there. So that then what an outcome was the historic Bent's Fort was built in Minecraft as well. And so what you're seeing here with Devil Head's Lookout, we also have a huge Bent's Fort that has been built by kids too. And that all comes out of this basis of the annotated resource set. So Laura, what do you think? You want to let's go ahead and we'll move forward and walk through the process. Is that all right?
Sure. We just make sure that you know that there are some templates and lots of other examples there for you as well.
We want to give you as much as you can use in the classroom, and that's why we've hot linked everything for you. This presentation will be there so you can hop in. So let's take a look at what this does for kids. We really looked at what an annotated resource set does for teachers. It builds context with background information. It gives a body of resources and primary sources to use in the classroom. But when students are using an annotated resource set, they are doing lots of different things, such as building skills, building a structure. They are working with certain structures that are in place that provide a planning template and also a storyboard. This also gives us some flexibility in chunking. It allows us to meet the needs of our lower students as well as some of our upper students that may need some more challenge. Depending on how you want to have students look at their inquiry questions, they can design their own or use a pre-formulated one that the classes come with together that they've decided to investigate. And in addition to that, it allows for some content delivery, a summary of knowledge, a collection of resources, and also something really important, which is a works cited. We want to model this for students, make sure that they're doing a works cited within their inquiry work and their research work. And so we're modeling that through the ARS. So let's do this. We're going to break it down into about 8 steps and show you how we broke the chunks down. This is going to lead us into how we can build things out, not only in a research paper, but also in a public presentation or maybe in a map. And we're going to show you how to do that. So let's start here. On the ARS, if we were to go into the template, the very first 2 pieces of the ARS, we've scrolled through some of those quite quickly, so we want to break it down for you. You have the title and the creator. And you'll see that we've got the project place. Now understand that this particular template that we're using today was really focusing on a historic place. We asked students to look at places that were involved in the Civil War or in westward expansion. So you're going to see westward expansion explained here. That's the particular template we used. But this can be totally devised for your classroom, which means that where it says number 1, project place, you could also put project event, or you could put era, or you could put person for a biography. That's changeable. That's why we're giving you templates to make a copy of.
We did some with animals with the Metzger Farm, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Whatever you are working on. Yeah.
So it's interdisciplinary, totally interdisciplinary. You can use it with art as well. We've asked students to put who developed it, and also for us, we're in an IB setting, so you've got individuals and societies rather than social studies. That's why that's listed there. You'll see also that we've given you a couple things to consider. We're going to talk about those briefly, but they're here for reference as well. You might want to think about one thing when you are filling this out and having students fill this out. You do want their name in there, but you'll want to have a conversation with them about what their digital footprint may look like. And so they may not want to use their name in the Adobe Spark piece, or they may want to use their first name and last initial. And that's a conversation based on your regulations for your school, the safety requirements for your district, and also what your common understanding of a digital footprint is. In addition to that, it's really important that you know that when we use Adobe Spark, if we transfer this over, there's 2 pieces in the title, and I put a little bit of a visual there for you. Do you see where it says under title, it says a subtitle is offered for the SPARK. I highlighted the 2 pieces just as a visual reminder for you. Adobe Spark asks for a subtitle. You don't have to use it, but it might be a nice way to have your students think about a main title and then also a theme or something that they're highlighting that's important. And you can do that particularly in this title slot. So where it says title, you can also add in a subtitle. Let's go to the next step. The next step is, where is it? Because this is a place-based activity, we asked our students to actually find where it was located. We gave them very particular pieces of information, and that included a description. They had to have that, and then they had to locate a GPS spot. Now, we actually gave them some specific things to look for when doing their GPS location, because we wanted to import their Spark presentations and their primary sources into a Google map. That's in a whole nother webinar, but I want to reference it here because we've used Screencastify to explain how to do this. And you guys can go look at how we explain to students to find a GPS point. Quick comment on that. If a student has a city and not a particular building, national park, or location, often you need to have the student look for an important building or the courthouse downtown, because in pointing a GPS pinpoint on a map, it's looking for something specific. And to get the numbers that it needs, you may need to name a courthouse or a city hall or Main Street. So just as a side note, if your kids get stuck, you might want to mention that. It is mentioned in the video, so I want to let you just know that as we're talking about it. Then going into step number 3, this is a summary paragraph. This is really important. It's going to give context information, and it's probably one of the harder things for kids to do in the classroom. But you can support them and scaffold this by giving some leading questions for them to answer. We've done this for our students, especially in a remote learning environment, where we have actually gone in to give them some of the things we're looking for. Because we're not there to coach and give direct instructions, some of this is happening in an asynchronous environment. We've given them very, very specific instructions here. In this case, it is better. This is not a place to have a research paper. It is a place to have something that's 5 to 8 sentences long, because you'll see that when we go through the Adobe Spark template, a little bit succinct is better than a little bit long. And that's because how you scroll within Spark. And we're going to show that as an example. Okay, here's where those resource pieces are. And we're going to break this down again a little bit later, but we want to make sure that you can see it here. This is where you are going to have students actually place one of the primary sources, use a caption, and then go in and put their URL or their resource link. This is important. We also have students label a primary and a secondary source so that they can identify what a primary and secondary source is. But as they're identifying and placing those URLs in there, have your students also download that image or that piece of text and place it into a folder in their Google Drive or on their desktop. Now, if they're using a Chrome, that means they're going to have to put it in their Google Drive. Why? It will make it that much easier to be able to upload it into Spark later. They will not have to go back and download all their images. If they're placing it in and researching and getting that URL at that time, this is the time to download that image or that text. We'll explain a little bit more of that later.
And one thing to notice on that too, those boxes are there so that students can right click. So when they download their images, they can right click and replace that box with an image, so it will automatically resize their image, so they're not spending a lot of time messing around with these huge images and trying to resize.
Exactly.
So that really helps.
And the captions are pretty important as well. This is a way, you know, we ask about real world application for students and really meeting those graduation requirements. This is a way for even our younger students to be able to write a caption, to be able to take information that they're finding out from the bib information or from analyzation and putting a very short caption in there and putting it in their own words. This is a real world thing they're going to have to do. And so asking them to do that in this annotated source will give them the power to build their presentation after, but it also is a writing skill that meets the reading, writing, and communication standards, not only for our Common Core standards, but for the majority of our states as well. All right, this is that critical thinking piece. It is the big so what. Why do I pick the source? Why exactly am I doing this? And my kids have to be able to say that. They have to add justification. If they are going to make a claim, provide a source, they have to justify it and provide evidence. And so this allows them to do that. It says, why are they using the source, how it connects to their topic of study, what kind of perspective it offers. And we often change this depending on what standard we're reaching. So if the language arts department is working on perspective at that time, we may go in and do a critical analysis here and ask the kids to define what perspective their primary source is from. And if you go back to that list of templates, we've got one in there that shows you how we do that. So you've got a perspective template there for you to use. All right, here's the most important. Laura, talk about the citation library, and you got this one covered. I'm going to let you do it.
So we love citing sources with kids because just walking through the process of citing a source can help them to decide whether this is a credible whether this is credible cite or credible information or something that can be trusted. It also can bring up some questions for them. We often have kids walk through citing a favorite site that they go to often. Can you identify the author? Can you find out where this came from? So modeling this, requiring this as part of the ARS set really is one of those key pieces to knowing where your information comes from and really identifying a primary source. We have some a couple of resources at the bottom. With my elementary students, I really like to walk through RADCAP. So you can go through the steps of RADCAP to identify the author, the relevancy, and really walk through the bias and whether or not you can trust that site. And the high school students seem to like the CRAP test. So the same thing. It's just a nice thing to remember to try to walk through those steps and really identify what resources you're looking at and whether you can trust those or not. So those are two resources, EasyBib and Noodle Tools. Those will create your citations automatically for you, but really walking your students through citing their sources and requiring that is a life skill and an important part of this.
And it's important that we continue to model that for students too. So we've placed it within the ARS. And we also talk about, making sure that we note who they've collaborated with, what work they're using so that it's there and present. So let's look now, the now piece. This may be part of your assignment. It may not be part of your assignment. And that's why if you look back, you've got a step 6 and a step 6, because you may choose not to do this part, but I have to say that I put this in for me because I think it's really important. And it comes around some preservation because we were talking about historic places. It really discusses what the now is. Does the place still exist? Is it being preserved? What's happening with it? It talks about that personal connection to now, what's going on to current events, how it's connecting to the student, and it gives some alignment there so they can make a contemporary connection. The student accommodations are important to consider too, and we are coming up into the closure of this first piece, but I want to make sure to highlight this for you. Really, an ARS can be broken down and accommodations can be given to your students through the use of individual screencastifys, breaking the ARS down in chunks, adding a different type of template, different inquiry questions. So we've given you some ideas here, hot linked into them so you can take a look at them so that you can meet the needs of your students at all levels. And it's not just about our special education and our ELL students, it is about our gifted students as well. So let's take just 1 minute. We have gone through and really talked about some planning, some research and inquiry, and also how we can apply this. The planning comes around developing that ARS set. The research is really looking at a structured student research piece, how students can use it, and then apply and share. That's our next step. We're going to go into Spark right now and talk about how we can do that. So we're going to stop right there. Are there questions, Laura, that we can answer?
There's one thing. Can you go back to the citations? There's a couple of questions.
Sure.
Just click on RADCAP. So There were a few questions. So this is a whole program, but really, and my kids, even when they see me now years later, I RADCAB that resource, like it just becomes part of the, you know, part of the shared language that you have with kids. And so you check, is it relevant? Are you on the, you know, right track? Is this even, are you supposed to be looking at Ben Sport, but you're looking at, you know, Minecraft? Is it appropriate? Is it at your age level? What is the detail? And you walk the kids through good resources, good online websites have a way to search. They have some kind of a site map. There are keys, and there's even some more details on here that will walk you through the details that a good website has. Is it current? And usually you can scroll down to the bottom. If there's nobody minding the store, if it doesn't say 2020, then you probably should wonder, right? Mm-hmm. What's current? Who's writing it? And then what's their bias? And we go through this, and there are lessons around each one of these, but this is really what RADCAB, and then the CRAP test does something similar. So we just had some questions around that. Thank you.
All right. Other questions that we can hit?
I think so far, I think people, so the ARS set is really the preparation to being able to build out your technology end product, whatever it is. Today it's Adobe Spark. Another day it could be Animoto. Another day it could be a Google site. But so they're kind of two different things, but we're curating and putting information in an ARS set in order to be able to then take that to our technology end product. So I hope that helps a little bit with some of the.
And I really think that the key piece is that the ARS ends up being a student planner, a student resource bank, where we used to use a stack of note cards, for those of us who are old enough to remember that, and copied pieces of paper and everything else. Kids can use a digital ARS to build that. And I would also argue that they can use it as a basis for a research paper, a basis for a series of tweets, a basis for a series of really Instagram posts. It can be totally used as a foundation point for a menu of options.
Right.
So we're going to stop right there just really quickly, because we need to let you know that there is a form that you can fill out now or later. We're going to take just about 30 seconds to a minute to just show this to you and let the guys talk and let you know what you need to do to get your credit. And then we're moving right into Adobe Spark.
Yeah, thanks, Laura and Michelle. As a reminder, just as Michelle mentioned, that we are offering a professional development certificate for your participation tonight. There is that link up on the screen, the bit.ly/PS teaching online, all strung together. And that will take you out to a form to do a brief reflection and just fill out some information on how to send that to you.